Blessings, good evening. Pleasant summer evening, weather not too hot, not too cold. Suitable for Dhamma practice. Of course, every day is suitable for Dhamma practice, but when the weather is just right, makes it easy for meditation, walking meditation, sitting meditation, going about your business. And there's some questions have come in today. So the first is, hello. Ajahn Kalyano's explanation of how to apply the Four Noble Truths was very helpful. Thank you so much. Could you please ask him what is meant when we are to investigate something? Are we looking for what gives rise to something and how does it cease? What tools do we use to figure this out? Thank you very much. Well, you may have heard of one central teaching of the Buddha, is teaching on what we call the Bojjhanga, the factors of enlightenment, which are like the essential factors or qualities that need to be cultivated and developed for enlightenment, for freeing this mind from suffering. So they are, first one is sati, mindfulness. Second one is Dhamma vicaya, investigation of Dhamma. Third one is virya. Fourth is piti, which virya means effort, persistent effort. Fourth one is piti, which means rapture. Then next one is passaddhi, is tranquility. Next one is samadhi, which is firmness of mind, stillness of mind. And the last one is upekkha, equanimity. So these are seven qualities that support the arising of insight that liberates the mind or leads to enlightenment. You see, the first two are the very important sort of functional ones, sati, mindfulness, and then Dhamma vicaya, investigation of the Dhamma, to remove delusion, ignorance delusion from one's mind. So, at the very highest level of Dhamma practice, investigation of the Dhamma is essential. And as we just chanted, one of the qualities of Dhamma literally means truth, or the way things are. One of the qualities of Dhamma is that it encourages investigation. Truth invites us to investigate itself, because it's the truth. It has a liberating effect on the mind. So as we cultivate this human mind, we naturally incline towards the truth, understanding the truth, because it has this liberating effect to free the mind from delusion, wrong thinking, stress and suffering. So you would say literally investigation is cultivation of the wisdom faculty, panya in Pali language. Panya is the center of investigation. We both use wisdom and we cultivate wisdom. But on the highest level, it's really just clear seeing and knowing, clear knowledge and vision of the way things are, which is the fruit of all the other factors of the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, coming together in the mind, supporting each other. So we cultivate wisdom in the beginning, of course, at every level of the practice, but the highest wisdom is the wisdom, the clear seeing of the nature of suffering, that it arises from craving, ignorance, conditioning, craving, conditioning, clinging. What we tend to summarize as mental defilement, greed, anger, delusion, causes suffering. And the highest wisdom is the clear seeing that removes greed, anger and delusion from the mind, because we know and see that they are the cause of suffering. If you know something is causing you suffering, you let it go, you abandon it. That's the highest wisdom, and part of our investigation is into that process of how suffering arises, but then how to end it, cease it. But this investigation requires mindfulness, sati, to support it, because sati is this quality of presence of mind, knowing the mind and knowing experience from moment to moment. It's characterized by non-proliferation. So the mind is not all over the place, it's not scattered, it's not lost in its thoughts and dreams, and not lost in the 5 hindrances. When mindfulness is present, then panya, wisdom, can cultivate and develop easily and well, because the mind is paying attention. When we lose mindfulness, then we lose wisdom. So they really go hand in hand. We use wisdom and cultivate wisdom, or cultivate this quality of investigation of the Dhamma at every stage of the practice. So in the beginning it may simply be hearing teachings and reflecting on them, considering them, giving what we call wise consideration or wise attention. So we start to learn about the truth. It may be in a more superficial way, just thinking about it, considering things, understanding what is what. But that's how we have to begin. And it may be on a fairly simple level, like, why am I feeling stressed today? Or maybe it's because I just had an argument with someone and I lost my temper and I feel pain or regret, or I'm still angry, sitting here getting angry, thinking about that event, for example. And investigation of the Dhamma might be understanding cause and effect in that simple situation, and maybe undertaking to be more mindful and careful to not fall into arguments again, or not to lose my temper again, so that I don't have to experience this same regret, stress, unhappiness, anger again. And that may be an investigation of something that's happened, or some experience that is ongoing, and one is constantly learning from experience. And that's a large part of our practice, is learning what is wholesome and skillful and conducive to inner well-being, happiness, peaceful mind state, and what is not. And we learn sila, or ethical behavior, moral behavior, by reflecting in this way and changing our behavior, so we give up acting out of selfishness, greed, anger, delusion, and cultivate the qualities of kindness, generosity, mindfulness. And immediately our life improves and our sense of well-being improves. That's the practice of sila. And then as we cultivate meditation, we're also using wisdom and investigating, like these 5 hindrances I just mentioned are the main obstacles to the mind becoming still and peaceful in meditation. And you use both mindfulness and effort and investigation to understand these hindrances, what feeds them, what helps you to abandon them. So that also feeds back into your lifestyle, your speech, your actions, your behavior. So again, you'll notice if there are certain activities and things you do in your day and your life that don't are not conducive to the arising of mindfulness, states of peace, states of clarity. If you sometimes just talking too much about all kinds of different stuff leaves its impression on the mind, and your mind is full of stuff from all the conversations you've had. Information, moods, memories, different thoughts, views and opinions. And sometimes it's as simple as the more we talk, the more stirred up our mind becomes. So then when you come to meditate, there's a lot of work to do to calm the mind and bring up mindfulness. And the same with, say, using phones or social media or entertainments. So part of our investigation is learning that relationship between our outward behavior, how we spend our time, what we do, what we say, and then the effects, the impression it leaves on our mind. So meditation involves, number one, cultivating mindfulness, but then also investigating the Dhamma to see what the obstacles are, what feeds them, what supports them, but what we need to do to abandon them. So like, for example, say you are feeling angry, irritated with yourself, with someone else, with the world, that may be the time to cultivate metta, goodwill, to calm yourself down so you can let go of that anger and be more at peace with yourself when you're experiencing anger. And that includes investigation of the Dhamma. So you're investigating what is your suffering at that moment, or you're angry, what is the remedy, cultivating thoughts of goodwill, tolerance, acceptance, reminding yourself to be patient perhaps. To do that, to employ the Dhamma or use the Dhamma, we need to investigate, we need to look and see what's going on. Then on the highest level is this clear knowledge and vision or clear seeing of the way things are. So as we develop stronger, more continuous mindfulness, the mind does experience more clarity, stillness, more peace. That supports, you might say, the deepest level of investigation where we're just observing phenomena the way things are. So observing the body as it is, as a collection of elements and parts, and directing the mind to observe and investigate the three characteristics of existence: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. As these characteristics manifest in the body, but also with feelings, pleasant, neutral, unpleasant, observing them as impermanent, unsatisfactory, as not self. They're conditioned things that arise due to different causes and conditions. We feel pleasure, we feel pain. Memories, thought formation, sense consciousness also are subject to these three characteristics. But when we are truly mindful and the mind is calm, still, then we can really see these three characteristics in our physical and mental experience. And our investigation moves beyond the sort of normal just thinking things through. Oh, it's like this, it's like that, thinking, reasoning, analysing, to more just knowing and seeing. And maybe almost no thought at all, or maybe no thought at all, or just minimal thought guiding the mind directing the mind to notice and observe the truth in experience. You know, if your mind is still, peaceful, mindful, you can see a thought arise or cease. You can see a feeling, pleasant or unpleasant, arise and cease. You don't have to think about it a lot. So investigation moves to just knowing, feeling, arising, passing away. And if you see a feeling arise, pass away, well, you know that is not a solid, lasting self. It's an experience that arises and ceases. So investigation of the Dhamma at the highest level as an enlightenment factor is seeing, knowing, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self in physical and mental experience. But it's a progressive thing from simply working things out, remembering the Dhamma, working things out, questioning, learning, looking, opening the mind up as we practice, to the point where all the factors, the enlightenment factors, are cultivated together, and the mind that is more calm still is just knowing the truth and abandoning delusions and ignorance, greed, anger, delusion. So, plenty to do, but try and keep in mind mindfulness and investigation of the Dhamma work together, support each other. Next question. How do we deal with a family member who is uncooperative, but we know they are not doing the right thing? Well, number one, this is a very common experience. I think if you ask anyone in the world, they'll probably be able to say they have someone in their family who maybe they don't see eye to eye with, or is uncooperative, or is doing things that are maybe harmful or not the best. It's a very common experience. It's different from from friendship, where you have more choice with friends, who you spend time with, who you associate with. Family, you're born together, so whether you like each other or not, or you agree with each other or not, there's a blood tie there, and that's something quite special, and it can endure the whole of our life. Obviously, some families become estranged, or family members become estranged, but quite often family ties last through the whole of life. So it's something special, but then it does bring up this issue that often beliefs, views, opinions, habits, behavior can vary between family members. We're not all the same people, are we? We have different characters, personalities, different karma. We keep in touch, we keep our family ties, so we keep coming back together again, so it can bring up issues. Whether you're actually living in the same household or you're simply related as family. If you have different behaviors, different views and opinions on things, well, there will be clashes, and we all know when you have a family get-together, sometimes these views and opinions come up and people argue and there's dissatisfaction, or when decisions have to be made about health, about money and finance and property, often the differences of character and opinion and belief come up. So the Buddha had us ground our actions and our mind in metta, goodwill, for ourselves and then for others. But goodwill is also modified and practiced together with compassion, mudita, sympathetic joy, and upekkha, equanimity, the 4 Brahma-viharas. And these are practiced and developed together, and we apply them in different situations at different times with different people. So if you have a family member who really doesn't see things in the way you do, and you feel they're going in a wrong direction, going downhill, or causing themselves suffering, or maybe causing others suffering, but there's nothing you can do so far. Maybe you've tried to do something to change them, help them, get them to turn around, but they're not. Well, sometimes we have to practice upekkha, equanimity, and accept that they're a different person from us, even though they're related through family ties. And we wish them well, and we want them to change and do things better or differently, but we can't. Maybe, we're not the person to change them, they're not ready to change, so then we have to have more equanimity and accept them for what they are, who they are, and accept their views and behaviors, accept their karma. And one thing to do is come back to yourself and, ask yourself, well, how much have I changed myself? Because really the place of practice is within ourselves, within this body and mind. And as far as other people go, well, we can do a certain amount to help others and assist others, and I'm sure many people do, but our ability to help and change others is much more limited. Where we can really improve our life and the world is through ourselves, changing, improving, practicing the Dhamma for ourselves. As you practice for yourself, well, sometimes you gain more understanding that you can give advice and support to others. So it's not turning your back on your relatives or your family members. It's simply putting effort into your own practice so that you are in a better position to maybe help them. You know more what is the way to true happiness, what is the way to suffering, you understand better, so then if you're understanding that better for yourself, or maybe you can assist others more. But I would start from this place of kindness, metta, karuna, compassion. Because the tendency is if you've got somebody you're living with or close to who's uncooperative or going in the wrong direction, well, if they're not changing, we often feel frustrated, and then when we relate to them, talk to them, that comes out. And so we get angry with them, irritated, blame them, criticize them, and that tends to push them away, makes them worse. So sometimes we just have to be very patient and work with it, bring up the kindness, both on the level of the mind, so in meditation and the way we think of them, and then also in our speech, our actions, the way we relate to them. And kindness often takes time, so you have to be willing to take time, allow other people time to change and grow, allow time for your own goodwill to have an effect. That, when I say time, that could be years, not just a few days or weeks. It could be years, a whole lifetime. But from what I've observed, when people practice with metta, goodwill, compassion, forgiveness, then quickly or slowly, good things arise out of that. And it will have a good effect on you and then your family members. So keep going, don't give up. And many, many people I know who have employed metta, goodwill, and keep returning to the goodwill in their relationships with their family members, close or further away. They get good results, good things happen over time. And the Buddha pointed out, it's always correct to abandon resentment, hatred, anger, irritation, negativity in your thinking and in your behavior. It's always correct to do that. So if your family member is making you very irritated or annoyed or frustrated, that's where you have to start, with your own mind, with your own frustration. Practice letting go of that, cultivating metta, turning your frustration into metta, working at it. And maybe seeing, well, this is a valuable opportunity to learn more about yourself and the world and life, and your uncooperative family member may become your friend and your teacher, and they help you to know yourself better. So don't give up, just keep going. The last question tonight. Dear Luang Por, can you please share some inspiring stories where the Ajahns met or had experienced devas or betas? Devas mean heavenly beings, betas mean hungry ghost, peta. So these are classes of beings from the Buddha's description of those beings we can't see in the world. There's the lower realms, 4 lower realms below human realms. Human is animals, betas, hungry ghosts, asuras, like demons, and then hell realm beings. And then higher realms, deva realms, there's the 6 heaven realms, and then the Brahma realms, realms of those who have developed jhana, rupa jhana, arupa jhana. So this is Buddhist cosmology, which is mentioned in the Abhidhamma suttas, but of course you can't see most of the time, most people don't see beings in these other realms. So that's already becomes an issue, whether you believe in them or not, whether you believe the texts or not, or believe the words of teachers, meditators who are seeing beings in other realms and confirm their existence. So teachers like Lumpur Cha didn't really emphasize this part of the practice so much. Certainly in public, he didn't talk much about devas and pettas because it can lead to confusion, doubt. Some people believe, some people don't believe. He tended to encourage people to look at the Dhamma from their experience that they can verify for themselves in the here and now, as you cultivate mindfulness to recognize the suffering of holding on to thoughts of greed, anger, delusion, for example, and abandoning those kind of mental states, freeing the mind, seeing the impermanent nature of this world, the physical world and mental world and so on. His teachings tend to focus more on that because that's the more practical, useful thing for us as human beings. But that isn't to say he completely denied the existence of beings in other realms, ghosts, devas. He simply didn't talk about them a lot. But in private, or even in his public talks occasionally, references to these things might slip in one way or another. So he might talk about how somebody becoming very caught into their greed, becoming obsessively greedy, and particularly if they're living or acting in an immoral way, then he might say, oh, this person is like a hungry ghost. Or somebody who's very generous, kind, or they're very deva-like. So it's not like he would completely avoid these terms or these concepts, but he didn't emphasize them. And encourage people to turn back to what is really useful for them, focusing on mindfulness, cultivating mindfulness in the present moment. Nevertheless, most monks over time develop some experience, more or less, with beings in other realms, seeing them, sometimes in visions, sometimes with the naked eye, sometimes with dreams. And those monks who attain what we call abhinya, the sixth abhinya, well, they may develop the divine eye, divine ear, can see, can hear, can even communicate with beings in other realms. It's possible. Still, you have to take their word on trust, but so be it. If you trust that monk, that teacher, you've met them, you know them, you've lived with them, well, maybe you can take their word for it. So, for example, one time when Lumpur Blien was a teacher who used to visit us in Australia and was known for his great abhinya based on his practice of jhana, he gained psychic ability. So one time one of the monks asked him about this story in the suttas where the Buddha was coming down the mountain, Kichikutta, and smiled. And one of the monks asked him, why are you smiling? I think it was Sariputta. But anyway, one of the monks asked, why are you smiling? And the Buddha had seen a peta, a hungry ghost. And then we were talking about how long a hungry ghost might live or last, in that realm of existence. It's another realm, still has a beginning and an end, or a birth and a death, just like humanity, human realm. And Lumpur Blien just casually said, well, that peta is still there today because when I went to India I saw it. So that means it's lived for thousands of years. So that's a hungry ghost, a being who has died because their mind, and become a hungry ghost because their mind is in a very unhappy state. It's a state of woe, of unhappiness, come about through extreme greed, anger, immoral behavior, meant that being reborn in that realm. And the Buddha even divided hungry ghosts up into different classes, different kinds of hungry ghosts. So the Paratatu Jivaka Beta, one kind of hungry ghost, can receive merit from the living. So that's why we have this Buddhist practice of dedicating or sharing merit with the dead in case they've been reborn as a hungry ghost, and they can rejoice in the merit we make, and that can be a cause for them to be reborn out of that realm into a higher realm. Some hungry ghosts can't receive merit. So we do have this basis in the texts and in teachers like Luang Por Blien and others have confirmed, well, there are beings who die and born in a state of woe, ghosts, and sometimes a monk with strong mind, strong metta, karuna, can help that being be reborn in a better place. Sometimes the teacher will encourage the relatives to make merit for the person who's died, to stop them becoming a hungry ghost, or if they are a hungry ghost, to get them out. So there's one teacher, a forest monk called Luang Por Wen. It's not Luang Por Wen, the monk who lived in Chiang Mai. Luang Por Wen lived in Pitsanoluk, I think, slightly further south. But he was a forest monk from the Ajahn Mun tradition who said his father had been reborn in a state of woe, and every year he had a merit-making ceremony for his father, because he knew with his own psychic powers his father is born in a very unhappy place, and he was making merit for him. And this monk, Luang Por Wen, was considered to be enlightened, very pure monk with a very good mind, psychic powers, and so he got all the monks and lay people of his monastery would come together once a year on the anniversary of his father's death and make merit for him. Until one year he said, enough, he's now been reborn in a better place. So Buddhism is full of these kind of stories, people making merit for the dead until they receive that merit and their mind is uplifted and they're reborn in a better place. Of course, it's very difficult to prove unless you have your own meditative ability, psychic powers. So sometimes you have to go with teachers, sometimes you just have to keep an open mind maybe. But it would seem to be that these different realms do exist, and occasionally people see or experience ghosts, hell realm beings and so on. And similarly devas, so people see devas, sometimes a physical form, sometimes light. Devas very often appear as light, sometimes they appear as a physical form in a nimitta, a dream, or very occasionally people see with the naked eye. And some monks are reputed to be able to communicate with devas. So like say Luang Por Mun is believed to have taught the devas, say at midnight, using his powerful jhana and psychic powers. He could talk to the devas and they would come to visit him to pay respects. And if you read the biography, there's some mention of this. One of the notable ones is devas visited him from Germany. So devas are not limited to Thailand or Buddhist countries necessarily. You know, devas are beings who have died with merit, with good state of mind, who've done good things in their life, and then they're reborn in a heavenly destination because of that. So they can be Buddhist or non-Buddhist, from other religions or no religions. It's more dependent on karma, the good karma and the wholesome state of mind of that being when they die. So Luang Por Mun was teaching the devas even from Germany. Many teachers with abhinya, psychic powers, talk about how certain places have devas. So most likely place to find devas is Buddhist monasteries, where people do a lot of good. So there are often devas associated with monasteries. There's different classes of devas, so like ground-dwelling or tree-dwelling devas, right up to very refined devas in the Dusita heaven realm, the bodhisattvas and devas with samadhi and lots of barami. And sometimes teachers talk about the presence of devas, seeing them. So they say Lumpur Chok was a disciple of Ajahn Mun. The monks who studied and practiced with him loved to sit around in the forest when he was chanting in the evening. He would chant for an hour or two every night. And the monks said there was such a beautiful, peaceful feeling and aura around Lumpur Chok as he was chanting. Why was this? It's because the devas also came to listen to the chants out of respect, out of faith and out of respect. And devas have a lot of bliss because their mind is in a very good state. They have a lot of natural piti and sukha, bliss. So when the devas are around, other people often feel that or sense that, especially if the other people are meditators and have quite sensitive minds. So the monks would sit there, some of them could see the devas, some of them would just feel the blissful energy and be very happy. You could say it's addictive, so it can still be an attachment. You can attach to bliss and the happiness of a deva life, whether you're a deva yourself or whether you're a human, but just being aware of the presence of devas, it can still be a cause of an attachment. When I was a young monk, one teacher warned me to be careful of female devas because they're beautiful. They're born beautiful, they have radiance, radiant aura, they have a lot of bliss. So if you see them, there are stories of monks seeing female deities and becoming totally gaga, entranced with them, lost in them, and just sort of can't get them out of their minds, falling in love with them, I guess you could say. So they say don't look at female devas or don't spend your time dwelling on them. If you ever see one in your meditation or one comes to your kuti, get rid of them quickly because they can be a basis for lust coming up. Devas are still unenlightened beings usually. I mean, there are devas who are sotapannas and sakadagamis, but some or majority of devas still are unenlightened, so they still have greed, anger and delusion, but they've made a lot of merit, a lot of good karma, so that is what is more pronounced in their personality and the way they present themselves, but they still have defilements. So devas can still get jealous, they can still have anger, still fall in love. It's just they usually are not harming other beings because they're devas. So one has to bear that in mind. Maybe I'll finish saying one story. When I was looking after Ajahn Chah, I used to nurse him the first sort of 5 or 6 years of my life as a monk. And one night, the night before his birthday, when all the Sangha had gathered together at Wat Pah Pong, and this was only a couple of years before he died, at midnight, round about midnight it was also the full moon night. So I was outside his kuti walking meditation back and forth, very peacefully. It was cool, peaceful, good atmosphere. My friend, because there's always 2 of us with Ajahn Chah at any time, 24 hours a day. My friend was inside the room, sitting meditation next to Ajahn Chah. I was outside walking meditation on the veranda. And as I was walking back and forth, this amazing globe or sphere of golden light arose in the garden. There was a pond behind Ajahn Chah's kuti, and this amazing ball of light floated down there and just sort of hovered there next to the pond. and it filled the whole garden, so it was like a massive ball of light. There's a lot of radiant aura, a lot of bliss, a lot of piti and sukha. I could feel that in my own mind, but also just the general energy was very blissful. So I thought, this could be a deva. So I rushed inside to get my friend, another monk, and I said, "Oh, come out and see this." And in those days, there's no mobile phones or cameras, so we couldn't take a picture, but I said, just come out and at least witness it. So he came out just at the end of it, and it was just fading. It was there for about maybe, 30 seconds, long enough for me to see it, and then go inside, call my friend out, and he just caught the end of it, and then it was gone. And we asked some of the other monks the next day, he said, "Oh, this amazing ball of golden light was hovering outside Ajahn Chah's kuti." And the general view was this was a deva coming to pay respects to Ajahn Chah, and it was just before his birthday, so maybe they were coming to pay respects for his birthday. So sometimes devas appear as light, balls of light, or streaks of light, radiant light. Sometimes they appear as a being with a form, with clothes, with a face, and so on. And many, many people have seen them over the years, more than I can tell you tonight. Anyway, I'll leave you with those few stories, anecdotes you could say. It's just one part of the evidence that beings in other realms exist, but it is only anecdotal evidence, very difficult to prove. So if you're skeptical, well, just keep an open mind. The teachers say if you want to see a being in another realm, particularly a deva, well, just make an adhitthana, a resolution in your meditation. Say, may I see a deva? And sooner or later you might see one, they say. I knew one monk, he had a wish to see a very famous deva in Thailand called Prakrutep Lok Udon, who's believed to be an arahant who's extended his life and is kind of living in the deva realm, looking after the forest monks of Thailand. So it's a bit of a legend, mystery. And this monk wanted to prove whether it's true or not, so he made this very strong resolution in his meditation, may I see Prakrutep Lok Udon. And that night, this very old, distinguished monk came to visit him in his meditation. And they call him Ajahn Yai, the big Ajahn. So after that, he said, that was a good adhitthana, a good resolution, it seemed to work. So maybe you can try that. If you want to see a deva, just make an adhitthana, maybe you'll see one. So I'll leave you with those reflections tonight.